They fired me before Christmas, demanding passwords to a system I built and legally owned. When the screens turned red and 750 trucks stopped moving, they realized they hadn't just fired an employee, they had unplugged their entire nervous system. The coup was fired. I knew I was finished the moment I saw Spencer Rodriguez clutching that pristine white leather folder, the kind they use exclusively for firing people at Atlas Freight Solutions. He was standing by the espresso machine, checking his reflection like he was preparing for a photo shoot 3 days before Christmas, and this guy was about to make the biggest mistake of his corporate career. My name is Garrett Walsh. I'm 49 years old and I've been the lead systems architect here for 12 years. I knew exactly how this meeting was going to end before Spencer even pulled out the chair at the conference room table. The 12th floor conference room was all glass and steel, sealed tight against the Phoenix winter, which isn't much of a winter, but the air conditioning was cranked up like we were in Alaska. Holiday music was playing through the ceiling speakers, some jazz version of Silent Night that made the whole thing feel even more ridiculous. Spencer didn't look at me when he walked in. He was too busy adjusting his tie and placing that white folder on the mahogany table with surgical precision. This guy had been here for 6 months. I'd been here since the company had 50 trucks instead of 750. He was the new chief operating officer brought in by the private equity firm that bought us out last year. Pinnacle Capital Partners had big plans for optimizing operational efficiency, which is corporate speak for cutting anything that doesn't show up on a quarterly report. Garrett, Spencer said, finally looking up with those dead gray eyes of his, we're moving toward a leaner organizational structure. After analyzing departmental redundancies, your position has been identified as not essential. Not essential. That's what he called the guy who built Logic from scratch. The system that routes every one of our 750 trucks, optimizes fuel consumption, manages DOT compliance, and saves this company about $75,000 every single day. I didn't blink. I just sat there, hands folded, watching this 38-year-old MBA try to dismantle what I'd spent over a decade building. He pushed the folder toward me. Standard severance package, 4 weeks pay, COBRA continuation, non-disparagement clause. We need an immediate transition though. I'll require all admin credentials, root access, and the master authentication for Logicor before you leave today. Logic. He said it like it was just another piece of software like Microsoft Word or something. He had no clue that Logicor was the nervous system of this entire operation. Every route calculation, every fuel optimization, every compliance check, it all ran through the system I'd architected. I can't do that, I said quietly. The silence was heavy. Spencer stopped reaching for his water glass and frowned. Excuse me, I said I can't do that. I can't hand over what doesn't belong to you. Spencer's face went red. He leaned forward, trying to look intimidating. Garrett, let's be clear here. The intellectual property belongs to Atlas Freight. Refusing to hand over company credentials is grounds for termination for cause, which voids your severance. It could also be considered theft. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my security badge. 12 years of swipings and late nights, worn smooth at the edges. I placed it gently on the table. You're firing me, Spencer. That's your call. But as for the credentials you're asking for, I'm telling you the truth. I cannot hand over what doesn't belong to you. He pressed the intercom button. Security to the executive conference room. 2 guards showed up. I knew both of them. Hunter Mitchell had been here almost as long as me. He looked uncomfortable shifting his weight. Mr. Walsh is refusing to comply with standard off-boarding procedures, Spencer announced. Escort him to his desk for personal items only, then out of the building. Hunter looked at me apologetically. Garrett, it's okay, Hunter. I'm ready. I stood up and smoothed my shirt, left that white folder sitting right there on the table. Spencer had expected a fight, maybe some begging. He didn't know how to handle someone who just accepted the end with a smile. The walk to my desk felt like a funeral march, except I was the only one who knew who was really in the casket. The office was decorated for Christmas. Garland around the cubicles, blinking lights, the whole 9 yards. People's heads turned as I passed. In an office this size, word travels fast. At my desk, I didn't touch the computer or the stacks of papers. Just picked up my coffee mug and a photo of my daughter Sarah from her high school graduation. That was it. I'd been cleaning out personal files for weeks, knowing this was coming. That everything? Hunter asked softly. That's everything. We walked to the elevators past the operations floor. Through the glass partition, I could see the big monitors showing green lights across the board. Green meant trucks moving, routes optimized, freight flowing. It was a beautiful thing to watch. All that synchronized commerce running on logic I'd written line by line. Spencer thought he was firing an employee. He didn't realize he was unplugging the heart monitor. In the elevator, Hunter didn't get in with me. Just badged the panel so I could reach the lobby. Take care, Garrett, he whispered before the doors closed. You too, Hunter. Merry Christmas. The door shut and I was alone. My phone buzzed. A text from one of the junior developers. They're asking for the authentication vault. What do I tell them? I typed back. Tell them to call Titan Systems. That text was going to make a lot more sense in about 2 hours. Let me back up a bit and explain how we got here. Atlas Freight Solutions didn't always smell like sanitizer and corporate fear. 12 years ago, when Logan Rivera still ran the place, it smelled like diesel fuel and honest work. We operated out of a converted warehouse where the heating barely worked and the carpet was held together with coffee stains and determination. I wasn't some fancy architect back then. I was the guy you called at 2 a.m. when the routing system crashed and $300,000 worth of produce was sitting in trucks outside Tucson with nowhere to go. I'd started as a senior developer at 37. Yeah, I was a late bloomer in tech. Spent my 20s bouncing between smaller companies, learning the hard way that loyalty doesn't pay the bills when private equity comes knocking. But Logan was different. He'd started with one truck and built Atlas through sheer will and smart decisions. When I joined in 2012, we had 50 trucks and a system held together with duct tape and prayer. That's how logic was born. Not in a boardroom, but during crisis after crisis where our old software just couldn't handle the complexity. I remember the winter of 2019 when a massive storm system shut down I-40 through New Mexico. Our competitors were dead in the water, but I spent 60 straight hours rebuilding the routing logic in real time. I created algorithms that pulled live weather data, cross-referenced it with fuel prices and driver hours, and automatically generated alternate routes that kept our entire fleet moving. When it was over and the numbers came in, Logan Rivera walked by my desk. Logan was old school, a guy who understood that the people who fix things at 3 a.m. are worth their weight in gold. If the wheels are turning, you're doing your job right, Walsh, he said. That was it. No bonus, no plaque, just acknowledgement that I'd kept the machine alive. From that point on, I stopped patching the old system and started building something new. Logic was designed for the real world. Port congestion, weather delays, DOT inspections, fuel price fluctuations, driver fatigue regulations. I taught it to think like a veteran dispatcher with 30 years of experience. But as the years went by and the company grew, moving from that warehouse to this glass tower, I realized something that stung. To the executives who came and went, I was just infrastructure. Necessary, sure, but basically invisible. Like the servers in the computer room or the forklifts in the loading bay. The new managers got the fat bonuses for landing accounts that my system made possible. They got invited to the strategy meetings where they decided the company's future. I just got performance reviews that said meets expectations and the quiet satisfaction of avoiding disasters every Monday morning. The real wake-up call came in 2021. We had a compliance issue. The system flagged a shipment of industrial chemicals that were misclassified by a vendor. Instead of investigating properly, management wanted a scapegoat. They tried to pin it on my system failure. I spent 8 hours digging through server logs and found the truth. The vendor had sent a force override code that bypassed our safety checks. My system had worked exactly as designed. It was the vendor who'd pushed dangerous freight through without proper authorization. When I presented the evidence, the lawyers went quiet and the reprimand disappeared. But no one apologized. No one said thanks for saving our asses from a federal investigation. That's when I realized that loyalty was a one-way street in corporate America. So, I started building insurance, not malware, not some sabotage scheme, just legal protection. In 2020, 4 years into my Atlas career, I restructured Logicor's architecture so the core algorithms were isolated and hosted through a separate entity, Titan Systems LLC. I set it up with Logan's blessing. He understood that private equity vultures were circling and when they came, they'd try to strip everything valuable and sell it off piece by piece. This way, the brain of the operation would be protected. You do what you need to do to protect the engine, Logan told me when I explained the plan. These corporate raiders don't understand that you can't run a trucking company from a spreadsheet. Atlas could see the logic dashboard and get the results, but the actual decision-making engine lived on Titan servers. For 4 years, it worked perfectly. Atlas paid the monthly licensing fee to Titan Systems, $12,500 a month, just another line item in accounting. Nobody questioned it because the trucks kept moving and the money kept coming in. Then came the acquisition in late 2023. Pinnacle Capital brought in Spencer Rodriguez and his whole crew of efficiency experts. They looked at our operation and saw fat to trim. The first thing they did was conduct a vendor optimization review, which meant questioning every expense over $500. Spencer was one of those MBA types who thought he could optimize his way to success. Fresh from business school, probably never worked a day in actual operations, but full of theories about synergistic cost reduction and streamlined vendor relationships. The Titan Systems invoice got flagged in his review. Spencer saw a monthly payment for advanced logistics optimization and assumed it was some consulting fee for a project that was already finished. He put the payment on hold to see if anyone would complain. I could have marched into his office and explained the whole arrangement. A loyal employee would have warned him that he was about to cut the power cord to his own logistics network. But Spencer had made his priorities clear from day one. He'd already fired 3 warehouse managers with 40 years of combined experience because their salaries were above market median. He'd cut our night support team from 4 people down to 1, leaving drivers stranded when problems hit after hours. He'd eliminated the annual safety bonuses that kept our insurance rates low. So, I didn't say anything. I just watched the Titan Systems invoice sit in accounts payable, unpaid, while the system kept running on cache data and momentum. According to the contract I'd written, after 60 days of non-payment, the license would expire and the service would terminate automatically. Spencer thought he was saving $12,500 a month. He was actually building the legal foundation for his own destruction. By the time he walked into that conference room with his white folder, the license had been expired for 30 days. Every query from Atlas to Titan servers was being logged as unauthorized access. Every route calculation was technically theft of intellectual property. Spencer thought he was firing a redundant IT worker. He was actually terminating the only person who could legally authorize continued use of the system that ran his entire operation. I walked out of that building knowing exactly what was about to happen. The handshake between Atlas and Titan was maintained by my active employee status. The moment HR marked me as terminated and killed my access, the authentication would fail. It wasn't sabotage. It was just good engineering. You don't build critical systems without proper authentication protocols. But I hadn't told Spencer any of that. The system didn't crash immediately when I got fired. That's the thing about complex distributed systems. They have inertia. Cache data kept things running for about 2 hours after my termination. The real problem started around 4:00 p.m. when the authentication tokens expired, and the system tried to refresh its connection with Titan servers. It began in our Tucson hub. A forklift operator named Carlos scanned a pallet of electronics destined for Best Buy, and instead of the usual cheerful beep and bay assignment, the scanner let out an angry buzz. The screen flashed. API connection refused. License expired. He tried again. Same error. Called his supervisor. Within minutes, it was spreading through the entire network like a virus. The handshake between Atlas's user interface and Titan's logic engine had been severed. Every time someone tried to route a shipment or optimize a delivery, they got the same message. In the IT department on the 11th floor, panic set in fast. Spencer had brought in his own manager after the acquisition, some guy named Colton Foster, who'd worked at a bank managing their internal systems. Banking IT and logistics IT are about as similar as a goldfish and a shark. They both swim, but that's where the resemblance ends. Colton was staring at a wall of red error messages, shouting orders to restart servers and clear caches. His team was frantically typing commands, trying to force connections that would never work. Bounce the authentication service, Colton yelled. Clear the token cache and restart the API gateway. They tried everything they could think of. Hard reboots, database refreshes, even attempting to manually override the security protocols. What they didn't understand was that every one failed login attempt was being logged by Titan servers as evidence of unauthorized access. By 4:30, the operations floor was chaos. The phones started ringing, not just 1 or 2, but dozens. Drivers calling from the road because their route guidance had vanished. Warehouse managers screaming because they couldn't print loading manifests. Dispatchers trying to manually route 750 trucks using Excel spreadsheets. And pure desperation. My GPS just went dead. A driver in Colorado radioed in. I'm carrying frozen turkeys to Denver and the system won't tell me which route avoids the mountain passes. I'm at the dock in El Paso. Another voice crackled through the radio. They say they can't load me because the computer won't generate a bill of lading. I've got perishables here. What do I do? Spencer stormed around the operations floor like a general whose army had gone deaf. He was screaming at anyone within earshot to go manual, as if you could run a modern logistics network with clipboards and CB radios during the Christmas rush. The first customer call came at 5 p.m. Walmart's supply chain director wondering why 40 truckloads of inventory had gone dark on their tracking system. The penalty clause in their contract was $5,000 per hour for delayed deliveries. Simple math. 40 trucks times $5,000 equals $200,000 every hour this kept up. By 5:30, Target was on the phone, then Amazon, then Home Depot. Every major retailer that depended on Atlas for Christmas delivery was seeing red lights on their dashboards and asking the same question. What the hell happened to your system? Spencer called an emergency meeting in the executive conference room, the same room where he'd fired me 3 hours earlier. He dragged in Colton Foster, the operations director, and anyone else who looked like they might have answers. Why is everything red? Spencer demanded, pointing at the wall monitor that usually showed a beautiful map of green dots representing moving trucks. Now it looked like a medical emergency. We're locked out, Colton stammered. The routing engine is rejecting our authentication. It's saying our license is invalid. That's impossible, Spencer snapped. We own the damn software. Actually, sir, One of the junior developers spoke up nervously. I've been looking at the code repository. The routing logic isn't stored locally. It's all API calls to an external system called Titan Systems. Spencer's face went pale. What do you mean external? I mean, we don't have the source code for the actual routing algorithms. We just have the user interface. The heavy lifting, all the optimization calculations happens on servers we don't control. The room went dead silent. You could hear the holiday music still playing through the ceiling speakers. Some cheerful rendition of Jingle Bell Rock that made the whole disaster feel surreal. Get around it, Spencer hissed. I don't care how. Clone the database, reverse engineer the API calls, just get those lights green. We can try, Colton said. But without the authentication keys, we're basically trying to hack into their system. That could be illegal. Spencer looked like he was about to explode. This was supposed to be his moment of triumph. Cutting costs, streamlining operations, showing the Pinnacle Capital Board that he was worth every penny of his inflated salary. Instead, he was watching his entire operation collapse in real time. That's when my phone rang. I was sitting in my living room watching the snow fall outside my window. Yeah, it actually snows in Phoenix sometimes. The caller ID showed a number I'd been expecting. Paige Bennett from Harrison & Associates. The voice said she was the IP litigation specialist I'd contacted 6 months earlier when I first suspected the acquisition might go badly. How bad is it? They're hemorrhaging money and trying to hack their way back into Titan servers. I said every failed login attempt is being logged as evidence. Perfect. We've been monitoring their intrusion attempts since 4/15. They've made over 180 unauthorized access attempts in the last 90 minutes. At $500 per minute of attempted unauthorized access, that's already $90,000 in penalty fees. I smiled. Spencer thinks he saved the company $12,500 a month by canceling the Titan contract. Instead, he's about to owe us more than he makes in a year, Paige replied. I'm sending the cease and desist letter to their board of directors now. This should be fun. The beautiful thing about good engineering is that it's predictable. You build systems that behave exactly as designed. Spencer had designed his own trap. He just didn't know he'd already stepped in it. Meanwhile, 180 miles away in Tucson, Carlos, the forklift operator, was still trying to scan that same pallet of electronics. The scanner kept buzzing its angry refusal. Behind him, $2 million worth of Christmas inventory was sitting motionless, waiting for a computer brain that had been surgically removed by a man who thought he was performing cost-saving surgery. The patient was flatlining, and the surgeon was still holding the scalpel. By 8 p.m., Spencer was ready to make a deal. Not through proper legal channels, of course. He sent me a text message like we were old college buddies. Hey, Garrett, think there's been a misunderstanding about the transition. Coffee tonight? We can work this out like professionals. I forwarded the message to Paige Bennett. She replied immediately. Expert communication with a represented party. He's digging his own grave deeper. The next morning, December 21st, Paige sent a formal demand letter to Atlas's board of directors. It outlined the unauthorized access penalties, which had been accumulating at $500 per minute since my termination. The total came to $480,000 for 16 hours of attempted breaches, plus a $320,000 reconnection fee for immediate service restoration. Total demand, $800,000. The board called an emergency meeting at 10 a.m. I wasn't there, but I heard about it later through discovery. Spencer tried to frame it as sabotage, claiming I'd planted a logic bomb in the system. That's when Logan Rivera showed up. Logan had been in retirement for 2 years, living quietly in Sedona. But when the board called asking if Spencer was lying or just incompetent, the old man drove down to set the record straight. I signed that contract, Logan told them, slapping the original Titan Systems agreement on the polished conference table. Garrett came to me in 2020 and said we needed to protect the core system from people who don't understand how to run a trucking company. Turns out he was right. Logan looked Spencer dead in the eye. You fired the architect without securing the blueprints. That's not sabotage, son. That's plain stupidity. The room went quiet when Logan pulled out his tablet and showed them Spencer's digital signature on the Titan Systems renewal from just 11 months earlier. Spencer had personally approved the payment, acknowledging it as a critical external dependency in his own vendor review notes. You knew it was a vendor relationship, the board chairman said, his voice deadly calm. You paid them, you authorized them, and then you terminated the relationship without any transition planning. Spencer tried to salvage his position. We can rebuild it in-house. The core logic can't be that complex. We'll hire consultants. That's when Colton Foster, his own IT manager, threw him under the bus. Actually, sir, we've analyzed the code repository. The Atlas system is basically a remote control. All the actual processing happens on external servers. We don't have the source code. We just have the user interface. It would take 2 years and $5 million to rebuild from scratch. The chairman stood up. Spencer, leave the room. Security will escort you out. We'll discuss your severance tomorrow. You can't do this. Spencer protested. "I'm the COO. I was hired to cut costs." "You cut the wrong costs," Logan Rivera growled. "You amputated the brain and expected the body to keep walking." Spencer looked around the room for allies. Found none. Every board member was staring at their phones, calculating how much this disaster was going to cost in customer penalties, stock price drops, and emergency consultant fees. Within an hour, the board had approved PA's settlement terms. Atlas would pay $800,000 to cover penalties and secure a new 3-year licensing agreement with Titan Systems. The contract included strict IP protections and gave me audit rights over their usage. When the wire transfer hit my business account at 2:30 p.m. on December 21st, I typed a single command into my terminal: "Restore service full off." On the operations floor at Atlas, the red screens flickered and went green. The API connections re-established. The authentication handshake completed successfully. Carlos in Tucson finally got his cheerful beep when he scanned that pallet of electronics, but the damage was already done. Atlas had lost $1.22 million in customer penalty fees during the 22-hour outage. 3 major clients had activated their backup carriers. The stock price dropped 8% when news of the system failure leaked to industry publications. Spencer Rodriguez was escorted out the same way he'd escorted me, with security guards and a cardboard box. The difference was when I left, I took my life's work with me. When he left, he took nothing but a reputation for spectacular failure that would follow him through every future job interview. I didn't feel triumph exactly, more like the satisfaction of a craftsman whose work had finally been properly valued. They'd tried to treat me like a disposable part, but in the end, they'd learned something important about the difference between owning a building and owning the foundation it sits on. These days, I work as an independent consultant. Atlas still pays Titan Systems $15,000 per month for Logicore licensing, a 20% premium over the old rate, and they never miss a payment. Other companies have started reaching out too, wanting to protect their core systems from the kind of corporate butchery that almost killed Atlas. I've got my daughter Sarah's college tuition covered at Arizona State. Got a nice house in Scottsdale with a pool and a workshop where I tinker with code in my spare time. The divorce settlement is paid off and I sleep well knowing that no MBA with a spreadsheet can take away what I've built. The best part, every Christmas I get a card from Logan Rivera. This year it came with a photo of him fishing in Sedona and a simple message: "Thanks for keeping the wheels turning, architect." Spencer Rodriguez, last I heard, was working for a small freight broker in Omaha. His LinkedIn profile still lists him as a results-driven operations executive, but the results he drove at Atlas speak for themselves. Sometimes I drive by the Atlas building on my way to client meetings. The trucks are still rolling, the system is still humming, and somewhere on the 12th floor, the operations monitors are glowing green. Logic is still doing what I designed it to do, keeping the wheels turning, one optimized route at a time. The difference is now they know exactly what it's worth. And more importantly, they know who really owns it. You don't fire the architect and keep the building. That's just not how engineering works. That's all the recognition a real engineer needs.